I'm Daniel, the past life regressionist, and it's time to begin.
Lift off and the clock has started.
This is Timeless Spirituality. Enjoy each and every time.
Fally, thank you so much for being here today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Ready to dive in?
Yep, I will follow you. You set the pace.
All right, first question. What's your favorite song that has to do with time and why?
There's a song that I grew up listening to. It's not particularly about time. It's about souls, like being above time. It's called Neshamala, which is the Hebrew word for soul. And it's a conversation between an angel and a soul getting ready to be born. And the soul is having this argument of saying, like, I don't want to be born. I kind of want to stay up here with you guys, having fun. And the angel is pointing out to the soul why it's a good thing for the soul to be born and come down and, be on earth for a while. And that song has spoke to me since I was a little girl. And I never really understood why. But now looking to see the trajectory of my life and what it is that I do all day, every day, it kind of makes sense. I think from a young age, my soul already kind of knew that this is going to be the work I was going to be busy with.
With that said, who is Fally?
What's my story? I think we're all beings made up of very many stories, but how did I get into this work? I think that from a young age, I was a little bit different. I can probably come up with a bunch of different reasons why, but I think a really good one was that in my teenage years, I was diagnosed with cancer. So I was already looking at the prospect of death at a really young age when most kids are considering graduating, taking their SATs, bad hair days. I had no hair and I wasn't sure I was ever going to graduate or grow up to be an adult. So I was looking at life from a very different lens. And then even when I did get better, I didn't go back to the way things were. I mean, once you change your perspective on how life works and why we're here and what our purpose or what our mission is, you kind of never go back to being just a regular kid. So it was a many years journey and I'm probably still far from done. But I want to say that that's probably what initiated my tumble into this world of spirit and higher meaning and purpose.
You're definitely an inspiration, so thank you for sharing your voice.
Thank you.
So what is it that Fally does? Sorry for speaking about you in the third person there, but it seemed in line with the other questioning.
It totally works. What is it that I do? So I really got involved in the world of hypnotherapy from an interesting place. I was in school hoping to become a forensic psychologist. I was really curious about how the mind works and particularly what motivates criminals to do what they do. And at the same time that I was in school for that, I was suffering with a lot of anxiety and depression on my end. And what I was noticing was that despite how far I was going in school in the route of, the psychology and academia, it wasn't actually helping me with my own personal stuff. And I was looking for anything, honestly, anything that was going to work. And I discovered hypnotherapy and it changed my life. And that was clinical hypnotherapy. But then once I got into the clinical aspect and I completely switched my focus. I dropped out of college. I was not going to go the academic route. And this became my focus, working in these kinds of approaches that I saw were actually helping. But once I started working with clients, some very strange things started happening. People started spontaneously having past life experiences. And at first I kind of, brushed them off. I was kind of like, okay, this is, projection, or this is people's really good imagination. But then some other weird stuff started happening. Like I think I mentioned to you when we were touching base before this interview, that when I first met my son, and I was 24 years old and I had no idea, I didn't know this world of regression, past life. And he was first put into my arms after birth. And the first thing I said was, oh my God, I'm so glad you're here. I missed you so much. And I was overcome by this feeling of having missed him. And I was crying. And I didn't know where that came from. Of course, later on, when I started delving into past life work and started exploring that, I now know how many lives I've shared with that little one and why I felt so connected to him immediately at birth. But going back to what was happening in sessions, I had some interesting experiences like a client started speaking a different language in the middle of a session. And I remember telling her at the end of the session, I didn't know that you speak Yiddish, which is a language that I'm fluent in. And she looked at me and she says, I don't speak Yiddish. And I said, but you did. There was this nice segment in the middle of this thing where you were in another lifetime speaking Yiddish. And she says, I don't speak Yiddish. I don't know what you're talking about. And luckily I had recorded the session and we rewound the session to listen to that part. And she was speaking in another language. And she looked at me and she said, I have no idea what I'm saying on there. She had no she remembered the session and she remembered what she had said, but she didn't realize at the time that she was speaking in another language. And these little light bulbs started flashing in my mind. And I felt this urge that I needed to look into this more, because I couldn't quite explain what was happening to people. And while in the beginning, I was willing to write it off as imagination or fantasy, when things like that started happening, I said, no, there's something more here. And I do need to find out more about what this is about.
Fascinating. Did you have an awareness of past life regression before these things started happening, or was it completely off of your radar?
So yes and no. So I grew up, and I still am, a practicing Orthodox religious woman. I'm married to a rabbi, and in the Jewish culture, and we do have an awareness of previous lifetimes. We believe in that. We believe that we come down here many, many times to rectify, wrongs and to complete our soul's mission, which a soul's mission is not something that can be done in one lifetime. It's a journey of many, many lifetimes. So I always grew up believing in that, but believing in it from a religious perspective or as an ideology didn't kind of match up to the idea of, wait, you can actually go there with the regression. So no, I didn't have a concept of past life regression. Although when it did start coming across my desk, it immediately made sense to me because I already had the background in my religion telling me, wait, this is a thing. I just, when you grow up religious, you kind of have this as a concept and you think of it like, I'm okay with this as a concept. You never question how this translates to reality. But the minute I did have a realistic, practical approach to it, there was something inside of me that says, yes, this makes sense. I can see how these two match up.
Coming from your religious background, is what you're doing with hypnosis and journeying into past lives in any way considered sacrilegious?
I've loved this question. Yes, but also no. It really depends who you ask. So, I think you can probably resonate with this on some level. There are two types of people who will come for a past life regression. Some of them will really be interested in the healing, and some of them just want the movie. And for the clients that come saying, hey, I just want the movie because I just want to go back and see who I was, I don't take those kinds of sessions on because it's never what they think. It isn't a movie. It's much deeper than that. It's much richer than that. And if you go in thinking that you're just going to get some cool information, you're actually not prepared for the deep tumble that you're going to take into your emotional world and some of the trauma that you may have experienced and still need to heal from. So from a religious perspective, it's the same thing. I don't really go into this to dig. I don't play games. But when it comes to the healing work and the soul work, I think there's a lot of religious precedent for this being a really important aspect of people's journey. When I did get into this in the beginning, I think when you grow up in a religious community, and it doesn't matter what religion you're in, there is a certain adherence. I don't like to use the word dogma because I think that's a very negative term, but there's a certain adherence to familiarity. We do what works. And we don't love a lot of change because we're afraid that change is going to be a conflict to our religious practices or beliefs. So when I got into hypnosis, and that was even before regression therapy, I had a lot of people telling me that this was anti-religion, despite me having sources to prove that this is actually has a strong background in the Jewish religion. With the time, though, about 10, 15 years have passed since then, and it's becoming a lot more accepted, a lot more spoken about. I think also 15 years ago, or even 10 years ago, nobody spoke about past life regression. So you had this one person who spoke about it, and they were the weirdo. And no matter where you come from, religious or not, we don't like weirdos. We kind of shut them down. But as it's becoming more and more accepted, more spoken about, people are having less resistance, more from whether it's less resistance from an emotional place, intellectual place, or even religious place.
So the people who, what was the phrase used for it? Like it goes against, how was it you phrased it? Because it was beautiful.
The belief systems or what we're comfortable with, what we're used to.
Yeah. That's the argument that's made in opposition to it, correct?
Yeah. Well, the argument that's made in opposition is, how do you know that what you're doing is really holy? How do you know you're not touching something that is dark? Or or also, how do you know that you have the wherewithal to take a client to the places where they need to be? You know, the same way we would frown upon someone who didn't have the schooling to do the kind of work that they're doing. We want to make sure that they have the skill sets that they can back up. So there's a religious, quote unquote, skill set as well that people want to make sure, like, are you really tight in your religious background? Like, do you know what you're doing? Or would you potentially take a client to a place where religiously she doesn't want to go?
How do you feel about that?
So when I was younger, and I know I'm still pretty young, but when I was younger, I was much more idealistic about it because, and kind of outspoken about it, because I felt like, what do you mean? This works. And why would you stop someone from achieving the healing that they set out to, you know, that they really deserve? Today, I still believe what I believe, but I'm a lot more, I don't need to make a statement. I also believe in, it's funny because you asked me in the email before this call to give you my social media handles. I don't have any. I'm not on social media because I have seen throughout all of my time on this earth that the people that are meant for you will come to you. And I've never needed to put myself out there. The right people find me at the right time. So I kind of also believe that with what you're asking, I don't need to change anybody's minds. I don't need to go out there and change the system. They will figure the stuff out on their own, or they won't. But in the meantime, I need to keep my focus on the people that need me, and they find me. And the ones who find me, they seek me out. They are ready for this journey. They don't need me to prove anything to them. They've already come ready and willing and open to work. So those are the ones I want to work with, those that I don't need to overcome that hurdle of proof.
Are you comfortable engaging in a conversation about the limitations or lack thereof of God?
Sure. Yeah.
So when you were speaking, what came up for me with regards to hypnosis is, why would God allow it if it wasn't, I mean, for lack of a better term here, kosher?
Yeah. Well, I think God allows everything, and being human essentially comes down to choice, right? Mm-hmm. He allows everything. He allows kosher and non-kosher. We have the choice between. But I really love this question because, going back to what I said before, 15 years ago, no one spoke about past life regression. And if you wanted to do a past life regression, you had to go to a really skilled practitioner. Today, and it's happening really fast, people are not only talking about past life regression, they're going to those places spontaneously without facilitation. They're going to those places in meditation, in breathwork sessions, and it's becoming almost mainstream to talk about past life regression. And what I have come to understand about this is, again, forgive me for veering off in like a religious direction, right? We're having the God conversation. Mm-hmm. I think God wants this. I mean, consciousness is developing. And as consciousness develops, more and more doors are open. So in the Jewish religion, we have a belief that at the end of times, there's going to be something called Tchiyat HaMesim, where the dead will be resurrected. They will come back to life. And I always had a problem with that because bodies disintegrate. So where do all, you mean how, wait, I don't understand how the resurrection is supposed to be working. Also, if we are all repeat souls, so which of my bodies are going to come back to life? I mean, my soul has lived in 1,000,000 bodies, 1,000 bodies, I don't know. So which is the one that's going to be resurrected? And coming to this awareness through past life regression, and even having spoken to religious leaders that I trust and I reach out to, I've come to a certain understanding that maybe this is it. Maybe this is what we meant by the resurrection of the dead, that we will start remembering. And instead of waiting for the bodies to return, we're waiting for the consciousness to return. Imagine meeting somebody for the first time and realizing this isn't the first time you met. You've already known each other 1,000 times before. So that, to me, is the greatest resurrection there is. And that has a lot of precedent within religious framework that even the rabbis can attest to. Wait, maybe this is how it's supposed to be happening. And maybe it's happening now because we are evolving and consciousness is expanding. So again, I'm not claiming to have all the answers, but for me, how does the God question get answered? For me, this is it. And I don't try to prove my point to anybody, but this is how I reconcile this for myself.
Look, I'm 100% on board with everything you said there. And what I find myself backing myself into a corner also is thinking of the other side of the fence. where my statement before was, why would God allow it if it wasn't kosher? But then I think back to what you said about surgery and someone being qualified to do surgery. Well, there are probably a lot of people out there who are not qualified to do it, but they still do it anyways. They end up killing people because, they were hitting the bottle too hard that day, or they forged their way through whatever channels. I don't know the intricacies of that world, but still, I'm going to the side of I believe that, of course, the hypnosis is a beautiful thing, and it can be so powerful and healing if you allow it to be. So I think that also goes back to what you said about choice, and that there's always choice in the matter. And there may be some things that we don't understand in the world, and it's up to us as human consciousness to have the choice to see how we proceed with those things, or if we completely turn away from them.
Absolutely. And I think that's why a podcast like this one is so important, because it gives people the information and the awareness that they would need to really do their research before diving into something like this. I think that the same way, you walk into a supermarket and there are so many different options for food that you can be ingesting, but you do have to be an educated consumer. You have to decide for yourself. You have to know your body. You have to know your nutrition. And the same thing goes for anything. And when it comes to healing modalities, I think that there is this, almost like this misconception that people have that, it's healing and therefore it must be good for me. But, amoxicillin is also healing, but you shouldn't be taking amoxicillin if you don't need it. Too much antibiotics can also mess with your system. So I feel like there does need to be a lot more awareness and information out there so that people can sift through, what's available and what can really work for them. And that's why, again, I love the idea that you're putting this out there as a podcast so people can really, I find that so many people are reading a book like Brian Weiss, right? Many Lives, Many Masters. And they're like, oh, I want this. And they don't really have a clear understanding about what this is and what we will actually do for them. So the more of us that are talking about this, and I think it's very much on us also as practitioners to constantly be on top of, how do I up my skill set? How do I, in the world of academia, you need a lot of supervision, right? Every therapist needs a supervisor. In our world, that has not been developed as of yet, which is a shame because Freud himself flunked out of hypnosis school. So he did not have a great bedside manner, which is why he started with hypnosis and he couldn't hypnotize people successfully because they didn't trust him. So he turned into, Freudian theology and all of that, and psychology as a field took it the turn it did because Freud veered away from hypnosis. But imagine had he stayed with hypnosis, had Freudian work been all about hypnosis, we would be the ones who would be doing this very rigorously under supervision. So we would have a whole different outlook on our field. And because that's not how it turned out, I think we as practitioners have to stand up for ourselves and say, hey, we may not have supervision, but we are challenging ourselves to do better, constantly, always learning and always upping our game.
What do you feel the most common misperception that you encounter from, let's just say, your incoming clients or your new clients is?
Wow. So before we'll go to the past life clients, I think in general, the first question that I get is, how many sessions is this going to take? I think the most common misperception that I get is people believe that hypnosis is a magic pill. It doesn't matter what they're looking to do, whether they're looking to get over certain phobias or bad habits, or they're looking to go to past life. People tend to think that it's snap of the fingers, super easy. And what they're not realizing is that this is soul work. It's deep, it's emotional, and sometimes it's heart-wrenching. And it's not a joke. It's beautiful and it's brilliant and it's eye-opening, and your life will never be the same after. But it's really, really, really important to come into this well-prepared and prepared to do the work, the emotional work and the emotional investment that this entails.
Something I encounter a lot with people who cancel sessions ahead of time is, and this is still just my feeling for it, when I look in my email inbox and I see that there's a message from this person without even reading the email yet, I can already just sense they're canceling. They opened up the pre-session questionnaire that I send them. I have that feeling that's what this is going to be about. and they're going to come up with some BS reason why they're canceling. And they'll say,
and they don't even know that it's a BS reason. They actually think the reason is valid.
It's amazing how many times someone's mother ends up in the hospital 3 days before a session. However, I do have to say, I have had that reason come up from people, but then they reschedule with me very quickly. So I feel like, okay, this is a valid response, but I'm just magically, all these mothers end up in the hospital just right before the session.
I feel like, are you the one who curses all the mothers? Maybe we should warn people about this.
I may be. I'm starting to think so, right?
Yeah, I bet you never had a person tell you, hey, I looked at your questionnaire and I realized that's way too much for me and I can't do that.
Never had someone say that to me.
Yeah, I wonder if it's, if people are even aware enough to know that that's what's happening. They're looking at the questionnaire and there's a subconscious part of them that's pushing that away.
However, I have had someone say to me before, I realize that I'm not ready for this, so I'll get back to you when I am. And I have nothing but respect for that. Yeah. And they may have looked at the questionnaire at that point and realized that they weren't ready for it, but just not acknowledge that it was the questionnaire. And the questionnaire that I send everyone beforehand is not very intricate. I'm not asking specific questions. I'm just giving general prompts as to the questions that they would like to ask their higher selves. It's like I have a section for career, a section for relationships, a section for emotional and physical, and then a section about dreams and nightmares. And
I'm starting to have anxiety listening to you outline that.
And then just additional questions. So yeah, I think at least just my feeling for it is once someone opens that up and they just like, oh, you mean I'm gonna have to address these things? I'm gonna have to talk about them? Oh, this wasn't what that book was like.
Yeah, I think that's also one of the things that people don't realize when they'll read a cool book like Brian Weiss. Brian Weiss is only highlighting the cool parts of the sessions. Mm-hmm. But what people don't remember is that he's a psychotherapist. He was doing really tough trauma work with clients who were bearing their emotions to him way before they were going to visit ancient Egypt and talking to mummies and stuff like that. So they're reading essentially a highlight reel, and that's what they think a session is going to be.
Yeah, 100%. And also feel that when someone reads those books ahead of time, they also have an expectation for how their session is going to turn out. Because I feel that when they're reading the book, they have this picture in their mind of how the information is coming forward. And then when it doesn't match that expectation, they're just completely thrown off their game. So the first thing I always say to everyone is just trust whatever comes through. Because however you think that this is going to happen, I can promise you it's not going to be that way. It may be similar, but it's not going to be whatever you're expecting. So just trust whatever comes through.
And that was my disappointment with my first past life experience, because I had read all the books and I had a lot of excitement going in, but then a lot of nervousness because I wondered, was my first experience going to be as exciting as I was hoping it was going to be? And you're right. The way the images came, they were more like body sensations, not images. And I was describing things, but they didn't live up to the pictures that I had in my mind. Also, what disappointed me in my first session was I went to the Holocaust. And as a nice Jewish girl, I was like, that's really disappointing and expected. You grow up learning so much about the Holocaust and reading so much about it. And I'm a granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. You're like, am I making this up? I kind of wanted to go somewhere fascinating, like ancient Greece or something like that. I wanted to meet Cleopatra or I don't know, Hercules or somebody, I don't know. I wanted to do all the cool stuff. And I was like in Frankfurt in the 1940s. And I just had this deep disappointment that I think people are not ready for, because again, they're not only expecting the highlight reel and to go to some cool places, but honestly, most of our past lives were not that interesting. Mm-hmm. You were a farmer and you spoke to nobody but sheep for 95% of your life, and then you died because you tumbled off a cliff. Like you weren't even murdered. You just tripped and fell. And people are so disappointed because they're hoping for some drama. And it's just like, nope, you were a shepherd. That being said, I think there's a lot of profound work to be done, even in the simplest of lifetimes, because nothing is really simple. Souls are magical and every single lifetime is an important journey, but people don't expect that. They really are coming for the highlight reel, and that's not what sessions are actually like. Mm-hmm.
And look, those are cool sessions, the really cool ones, the ones that come every so often. But there's also not much I'm off grammatically here today. there's really not that much that's accomplished in those cool sessions.
Right. Yes. It's all about the story and less about the lessons. And I find that the most profound lessons are in the simplest of lifetimes.
It's true. It's the beauty of simplicity. Whenever I'm asked what my favorite life is, I always default to, it was the life where I was a fisherman in Appalachia. I lived in a little cabin up there. I got up in the morning. I go fishing in the river, overlooking this amazing valley. If I caught some fish, I bring it back. I cook them. I go to sleep. Go fishing again the next morning. I go hunting if I need to. Go to sleep. That was it. That was what I did. But what that life taught me about now is that I need to cherish the beauty and simplicity. And that taking a few moments to just go drop your feet in the river and just stand there is priceless.
Yeah, I definitely connect to that. Had a couple of simple lifetimes, but my favorite actually go to something a little, I don't want to say more colorful, but did you ever notice that if you go into lifetimes a couple, maybe 1,000 years ago, the world was actually different then? It looked different. I think it looked different. It felt different. Things were more alive. Things felt more vibrant. And this is not the right word to use, but magic was more tangible. It was prevalent. I think it was real. I think we use the word magic because we don't know how else to describe the supernatural or something that we don't understand. But there were definitely elements that disappeared over the years. And going back to some of the older lifetimes, there were things that were so much a part of everyday reality that don't exist anymore. And I think those are my favorites. It wasn't about high impact or high drama lifetimes. Those lifetimes were actually simpler, but richer in a certain way. Like the air had a charge. I can't explain it. Like, I think you really felt it. You breathed it in. You understood the power that you had as a person. You understood the power of your words, of your actions. I think because the world was a simpler place, we had so much more power than we do today. Today, a lot is getting lost in translation. There are so many transmissions happening at once that we feel much smaller than we actually are. So yeah, those were my favorites like a couple of 1,000 years ago.
So I'm going to bring up a life right now that I experienced that I've never talked about before. Because when I usually discuss the lives that I've experienced, I stay away from the high impact ones because what's the point? That's just my feeling for it. Unless I'm looking to really earn some street cred with the new agers.
Right.
Oh, wow, he did this. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
So I will talk about a life where I was a farmer a couple 1,000 years ago. I'm hesitant to attach names to these places for these ancient lost civilizations as we know them.
They do come up though.
Oh, they come up. I'm hesitant because it's not the names that matter as much as the experience. But
do you find though that when these names do come up, there is a surprising uniformity between people's experiences? What did you notice there?
Everything was alive. When I was farming, it felt like the plants were talking to me. Actually talking, but it felt like there was an aura there. I did feel a bit lighter as well. It felt like I was just having conversations with lima beans.
I had this where people would say, I lived in this and this civilization, and being a farmer was not like it is today. We didn't have to work hard. We could talk to the plants and they could tell us what they needed. And it was a joint effort in getting them to grow. And when you describe the idea of an aura around a plant, have you ever read the Celestine Prophecy?
Mm-hmm.
So he talks about that. I think it's insight number 3 in the 9 spiritual insights to consciousness expansion. And plants do have auras. And I think as we're becoming more aware, I don't think we're becoming more aware as much as we're remembering something we already once knew, that we used to do this. This is not new information. Something happened and we forgot it all, but we are coming back to something that we already knew.
Okay, I'm about to make a very, very egocentric comment. 11 years ago, I wasn't in the darkest place of my life, but I was very down on myself. And it took a book that I read a year later called The Timekeeper, which I've talked about on here, to really change my life, because there were 2 words that were spoken in the book, and the words were not yet. And once I read those 2 words, it changed everything for me. But a year before that, I spent 3 days on my balcony. I came in to go to sleep, but there was just some pull I had to sitting out on my balcony. And this is also before I had really explored this world that we're in now. None of it was on my radar. And I felt like there was something that was talking to me. And I felt there was a message being delivered to me saying, you were born to make history. And I still can't really wrap my head around why I felt so drawn to sit out there for 3 days. But what I feel that I came to the understanding of a couple of years after that, I was having a conversation with a tree. There was a tree that was outside my balcony, and I felt like I was receiving from it, and also subconsciously in one form or another communicating with this tree, having this conversation back and forth without saying the words out loud. I mean, I thought I was losing my mind at the time, like something's talking to me. And I didn't even think higher self, spirit guides, and I wasn't thinking anything on the negative side of things. I'm just like, I'm certifiably losing my mind, or my ego is just so out of whack that I'm just telling myself that I was born to make history. Now, to reel that comment back in, I may have already made history, but that doesn't mean that my name needs to appear in a history book. It could be in some way that I've impacted someone else's life who's going to change the world in one form or another. So it's like, I feel that those players don't always show up on our radar. But I guess that was my way of saying, I think I had a conversation with a tree without being aware of it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. About 2 years ago, I got rid of all of the books in my bedroom because I felt like they were talking to me at night. I felt like I couldn't sleep because they were all whispering to me. And I replaced 500 books with a beautiful tree that I now talk to all the time. Yeah, I feel like this is going to go on air and people are going to think we are certifiably crazy, but you know what?
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
We probably are.
Yeah. You know what?
Cool.
At least it's much more fun on this side of the fence. Like the straight-laced people are not having any fun. It's much more fun to be crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I love what you said about making history. I actually find that there's a price to pay for, let's call it being famous, because it actually limits you. You think you would have more power being on a platform and being heard, but I find that it often does the opposite. It gives you less power because people have a certain image of you, and then you become subservient to that image and you lose your power very, very quickly. I find that a lot, let's say on social media right now. People start out with really, really good intentions, and then they become so focused on the algorithms and keeping themselves in a certain place that they lost a little bit of their initial spark and their touch that made them so likable to begin with. And something else I noticed is that the more time you spend, let's call it on a social media site, people start sounding very much the same. They all started with different platforms, but then again, they're kind of, there's a uniformity of they lost a certain part of their passion or their mission in keeping up with the algorithms or the image or the fame or trying to make history. And you're right. I think the key players are the ones you don't know about. I mean, have you watched Game of Thrones?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the most important player is arguably Varys, right? Because he's the one that nobody sees, but he has all the information and he's behind everything that happens in the kingdom. And it's just like, he's not the one making history. And yet he's kind of making history. He's kind of orchestrating everything. So if you ask me who I want to be, I'm not looking to sit on the throne. I kind of like where I'm at right now. Gives me a lot more freedom, a lot more flexibility to actually be myself. And I think that that's the only way you get to make history, by being uniquely you and not what people expect you to be or want you to be. You can't make history by trying to be someone else.
I agree with that 110%. And with regards to Game of Thrones, well, we saw how that turned out when everyone's going for the throne. But we don't need to spoil anything.
Yeah, we're not spoiling anything for anyone.
By the way, I thought the ending was genius. And I think I'm probably the only person.
Are we the only ones who think that?
Oh, you think so too?
I do.
It was genius.
Of course,
absolutely genius.
But if you follow the trajectory of the show, it only makes sense.
Right. How does no one else understand that?
Right. Like, were you expecting it to be happily ever after? Like, what were you thinking? Of course this was going to be the ending.
I was brilliant. It was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Like,
also, I love the ending of Lost too.
Yeah, what? Are you? Me too.
I love it.
I know. And
best finale of all time.
I just finished binge watching it this summer. I know it's like 2003 and I just needed to do it again this summer. And I'm just like, everyone's telling me how much they hated the ending. And I'm like, look, it could have been, I felt it was really rushed, but they could have spaced it out better and fleshed it out better. But that was a brilliant ending. It was
Brilliant.
so deep. It
Brilliant.
was so deep. And I called all of my friends and I'm like, I know you hated the ending, but actually right now I'm really questioning our friendship because I don't know why we're friends if you don't get it. Well, I'm glad you do.
I get it. And I have no friends then. Yeah, it was brilliant. But I guess that's maybe where we're a little unique is I loved the ending of Game of Thrones. And I know this is a past life podcast, but whatever. It's called Timeless Spirituality. It's in tow.
Whatever works.
I loved it because it didn't give you what you wanted.
How is that not like your life? And I think with Lost also, I think what people don't realize is that was premiered in 2003. That's a long time ago. That's 20 years ago. So season 6 came out, 2009? People were not into spirituality at that point. So people like me and you were able to watch season 6 and say, wow, we totally get this because it sparks something that our souls already know. But people were not ready for that back then. I wonder what would happen if people would rewatch season 6 with a lot of the new age consciousness coming through. I wonder if people would think differently about something that they had no awareness of back in 2009.
Lost is what did it for me. Now, it didn't swing me around to all of the new age stuff, but what it did for me, especially that last season, was it opened up my eyes to, dare I say, reincarnation and thinking about it a little bit. And it was through this medium of a fictional TV show that made me start to see the power that storytelling has to elevate consciousness. Now, still, I didn't have the terminology for it at the time, but Lost inspired me to become a storyteller because that's what I want to do for humanity, is what these writers did through a show about a group of plane crash survivors. And the irony of how we met, a lot of it has to do with Lost. Now, we met through my friend Kaylee.
My friend Kaylee.
Oh, okay. Our friend Kaylee.
I love you, Kaylee. I hope you're listening to this.
Oh, she's listening. She's listening. Yeah. Kaylee is awesome. I have nothing but fondness and admiration for Kaylee. She's one of my heroes. And something that Kaylee and I connected over was a song that I wrote. I wrote it after an episode of Lost that took place in the 6th season. Now, I've changed it a little bit since then, but the premise of it in the chorus was written after an episode with Hurley and Libby. Well, you probably watched this recently, right?
I watched it recently. I'll tell you what sparked that soon. But yes, I know what episode you're talking about.
And it was in that moment when I really started to realize what was happening in that final season. And now this is a song that I've performed live many times. This is a way that I try to get clients. And it worked also because I got to open mic nights. I'd perform something so off the wall first just to reel people in, like something very upbeat. I usually do a hip hop medley on acoustic guitar. And then I slow it down for this song about soulmates and finding a lost love in another life. But I think this actually goes really hand in hand with what we're talking about. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to recite the lyrics.
Please do.
All right. So again, the chorus is intact as it originally was, but I've changed some of the verse lyrics. When I walk, the song's called Will a Kiss Remind You? Sparking anything there for the Lily Hurley?
Wow, yes.
The Libby Hurley? All right, so here it goes. When I walk through the doorway, your smile lit up the room. I could tell you saw me, and some would call it deja vu. As I walked up to meet you, your eyes conveyed a sound. Do you feel like a lost love who's on the edge of being found? And then with a smile you said, will a kiss remind you of the day when I was your first love? It was another time, another place. What can I say? I know I've loved you, and I know you've loved me too. So will a kiss remind you of the day when I was your first love? And as you leaned in the first time, I felt the stars align. Oh, shit, what's the next line?
I'm like tearing up as you're saying that. There's so much in that song.
Oh, thank you. But so as I leaned in the first time, I felt the stars align. I had waited lifetimes to kiss you in the perfect light. That's my favorite line I've ever written of all time.
That's beautiful.
Right. But how could I forget you? Tales sing their rhymes. We're lost souls in the cosmos, lovers from another life. And then with a smile you said, will a kiss remind you of the day when I was your first love? It was another time, another place. What can I say? I know I've loved you, and I know you've loved me too. So will a kiss remind you of the day when I was your first love? It seems like the memories, they've always flowed through my mind. Which is, I've sang it so many times, so it's like, seems like the memories have always flown through my mind. Oh, here we go, yeah. Feels like I've kissed you for the first time about 1,000 times. I'm so off key too. So yeah, feels like the memories, they've always flowed through my mind. Feels like I've kissed you for the first time about 1,000 times. I know I've loved you, and I know you've loved me too. So will a kiss remind you of the day when I was your first love?
That reminds me of Christina Perri's song.
1,000 years?
Yeah. Because I think that's true. I think there's something to finding your soulmate again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's also really true when it comes to love, because if we look at our soulmates as people we have known before, and we've managed to find ourselves find each other through thousands of lifetimes, is it even a question that we're going to find each other again? I know that I've met people that I've known before in other lifetimes, and that feeling, I don't even know how to describe it, that soul feeling of, I know you, that feeling that I had when I met my son of, I've missed you. And to a 24-year-old girl from Brooklyn who had never heard about past life regression, that was such a profound feeling. And he mirrored that for me for many years, this little one. He's 10 now, but for years he would do these strange things. Like he would flirt with me. I never had that before. I had a little one just flirting with me or telling me strange things. Like he would tell my husband and I, he would tell my husband, you are my father, but you're not married to my mother. I'm married to my mother. And we would argue with him, and he would cry. He would say, don't you remember from the time when I was big before? And he would say, I hate being little because when I was big, you listened to me. He says, don't you remember? And what's funny is that it's actually not that uncommon for kids to be born remembering. They tend to lose it by the age of 5 to 7. But when parents are open to hearing and engaging with what the kids are saying, they actually don't lose it. And I think more and more of that is happening today. Like we said, as consciousness is expanding and kids are being born speaking about these things, retaining it, we're being able to access it, which actually brings me back to why I was watching Lost. When I was pregnant with that child, I had this crazy urge to watch TV that I wouldn't normally watch. And the 2 shows that I was watching when I was pregnant with him were Game of Thrones and Lost. And that was 10 years ago. Well, 11 years ago was the pregnancy. And I was binge watching them. And I did not understand why. I didn't understand what was drawing me to these shows. And then watching him and go through his childhood and the stuff that he's fascinated by and the stuff that he's interested in. And then kind of how getting to know my son was part of the reason that I got into past life regression. It totally makes sense that while pregnant with his energy, I was drawn to these TV shows. And then he's 10 years now, and I had a 10-year break, and I recently just had another son. And weirdly enough, during this pregnancy, the same thing happened. I was once again drawn to binge watch all 6 seasons of Lost. And I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to question it, because obviously if I saw what happened last time, that soul kind of made me do it. Well, I'm very curious to know who this soul is now. So the more I see it, the more I believe in it. And I feel like I'm kind of, I feel bad for the people who don't live the life we do, because our lives are so fascinating. We don't just live life on this dimension. Everything that we do, I mean, you can see the infinite potential of every moment that you're living right now, even the mundane ones. So yeah, I very much love that this is where I'm at and this is what I get to do.
I think that's a perfect place to end it.
Except that you were going to tell me how you met Kaylee.
Oh, how
you said it had to do with Lost and the song.
More so the song. I met Kaylee at a wedding in Israel. It was at my best friend Brian's wedding. And I ran into another friend of mine. Her name is Charlotte at the wedding.
I know Charlotte.
Everyone knows Charlotte, right? You go anywhere in the world, everyone knows Charlotte.
Right.
It's true, right? It's a true story.
It's totally true.
She's just one of those people. Everyone knows Charlotte.
Like I landed in Israel and I was jet lagged and Charlotte took me out to a bar. And you
Of
don't
course.
say no because that's Charlotte.
Yeah. She just pops up everywhere, just randomly.
She's one of those history makers that you'll never hear about.
It's true.
Except on this podcast.
Very true. And so I was just kind of catching up with Charlotte there because I hadn't seen Charlotte in, it was probably 11 years at that point. And she's like, oh, what are you up to these days? What are you doing? I said, oh, I'm a past life regressionist. And she says to me, you need to meet my roommate. Like, you absolutely need to meet my roommate. She's totally into this stuff. You guys would just have such a great conversation. And I said, I'd love to, but I'm leaving tomorrow. And she says, no, you don't understand. She's here. She's at the wedding. I'm like, okay, yeah, where is she? Like, let's talk. Let's talk. I love these conversations. So I met Kaylee. We talked about what was going on with her at the time, which it's okay for me to bring it up because we recorded episodes about this. So I know she's okay with it being out there, which is her fiance had recently passed away. And she was reading, she was getting into this in this space because of the curiosity that came along with it. And I had no intention of doing any sessions while I was in Israel. But as the night went on, I couldn't fight this feeling that I was supposed to do a session with her. And when I went up to her and said, hey, I'm heading to the airport tomorrow, but I want to do a session with you. So I can do it first thing in the morning. It's going to be a quick session because I can't do the whole shebang because I got to get to the airport. So she was on board with it. Me saying on board with it, she was ecstatic that I wanted to do this session. I showed up at her place in the morning with all of my luggage, and I happened to have a guitar with me. And I felt that the essence of what the session was going to be about David, her fiance. And since I didn't have the time to really do the whole pre-session, I just improvised. And I said to myself, I can sum this up in 3 minutes. All I have to do is play this song right now, and it will help put her in that space. So performed it really quick. Then we went and did the session, and that session changed my life. I know it was very profound for her, but it changed my life because I'd been a practitioner for 2 years at that point. And I was the practitioner who always wanted the profound sessions, or not the profound, but the flashy ones, the magical ones. And anytime I wouldn't have one of those, I wasn't disappointed, but I wasn't as excited as I was when I'd have the spectacle magical ones. But there was so much heart involved with that session that my perception as a practitioner changed instantly. And I realized this is what it's all about. Because in the session, Kaylee saw herself with David in other lives. And at the end, David came through to say to her, everything is okay. I love you. I just want you to be happy. So it was that recognition of seeing that they'd been together before. And I think her coming to that understanding of they will be together again. And just to be there for that changed everything for me. And that's why even for this podcast, as we're recording this in early April of 2022, tomorrow will be the 22nd episode that I release. I could have easily filled up 22 episodes with the magical spectacle sessions, but I'm choosing not to because the heart of it is what really matters. Would this podcast be much bigger if I did all those? Yeah, it would be. Is that what people really want? Yeah. But I'm giving them what I believe they really need. And if my show doesn't take off because of that, well, I don't need to have the biggest show in the world because it's about the heart of everything. Now, that doesn't mean that I won't be doing those episodes because, yeah, of course, I'm going to do them from time to time because they're still pretty cool. It's cool to just share those stories. But even when I have those episodes, it's about what's the heart of this? How does this help improve someone's life as a human in the here and now, or, the mysticism of it? Well, how does that apply to being a human now? And that's how I met Kaylee.
I think that's actually really relevant when we spoke about writing history, right? And your desire to be a storyteller, because ultimately, what is history? History is the story that we choose to tell about our past. And what I'm realizing more and more is that the history that you learned in school doesn't tell you anything about our humanity. And what is the purpose of learning what happened if you're not learning from what happened? And I think especially if you're looking at world events right now, people like me and you, we're probably just stepping back and we're watching cycles and patterns repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And we say this, history repeats itself, except it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to, because if you keep the heart in the story, then you're constantly going to be evolving, learning, growing, and changing. It's when you take the heart out of history that these cycles tend to repeat, because you haven't learned what you came here to learn. So yes, we are the storytellers. We are the history makers, but we're making a very different kind of history than the ones you grew up learning in school. The ones you grew up learning in school is kind of pointless. It's written by the victor, the one who has all the power, writes the pages, and it doesn't really teach you much. It doesn't tell you how we evolved and how we changed and how we grew as a society. But I find that the work that we do, the past life work, when you can go to like the fisherman life, right? And you can see, it took me a lifetime to learn about simplicity. But now I cherish those simple moments and I take that with me into every lifetime going forward. That's where the real changes are made. And that's where we break generational trauma, patterns, cycles. And, that's where we're heading to.
Thank you so much for that message. And thank you for an amazing episode.
Thank you for having me here. I mean, I love talking. My friends know you can't ask me about my work because I will literally never shut up. So when someone invites me to come on and talk about my work, I'm like, yes, I get to talk about my work.
I want to have you on again. Would you be open to that?
Absolutely. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of what we can actually talk about.
Right? Barely.
Yeah.
This conversation needs to continue.
Yeah, we haven't even touched. I mean, we've started regression, past life, but we haven't touched life between lives and, magic. So there's so much more we can be talking about. I'm definitely in.
Well, thank you. And where can everyone reach you to work with you?
So I'm actually on sabbatical this year because like I said, I just gave birth to my son a couple of weeks ago. And if you had asked me 10 years ago where I was when I gave birth to my last son, I was so high powered, focused on success and my career. And in 10 years of, let's call it, doing this work and really getting back to the heart of things, I just realized that's not where I'm at. My career will wait. If we can find each other after lifetimes, then the world can wait a year for me to come back to work as I, spend time with my son and bond with him. So right now, I'm not really reachable. People can email me. I always respond to my emails. It can take me some time, but I do respond. Do you want me to name it, or do you want me to just text it to you so you can put it in the session notes?
Let's do both.
All right. So the email is kind of a hard one to spell, but it's initiatoryexperience@gmail.com, because I do feel like that's what my work is. I'm not the guru. I'm not someone that I want people to always reach out to. I want to give people an initiation into the rest of their lives. And it's one experience, it's an initiatory experience that opens up the potential for your future. So that's my email address.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. And thank you for an amazing episode and for sharing your story.
My pleasure.
Fellow time travelers, your journey through time awaits you. Just want to thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. And if you're interested in discovering who, when, and where you have been throughout time, and you'd like to book a session with me, just go ahead and send me a message on Instagram @thepastliferegressionist, or you can reach me through my website, yourpastliferegressionist.com.